Hi, I'm Sophie Keeling and I'm going to talk about my new paper, Controlling Our Reasons, which is forthcoming in news. I'm generally interested in the reasons for which we believe and act. For example, maybe I believe that it'll rain because of the weather forecast, or I go to the shop because I've run out of hummus. Or more weightily, maybe I volunteer because it'll help other people, or I endorse one politician over another because of their policies. Now, when I'm talking about reasons in this sense, this isn't to say that they're actually good reasons. And also there are going to be other explanations for all of these beliefs and actions. There are going to be all kinds of stories at the subpersonal level involving neurophysiological processes. Now, I didn't do very well in biology, so I'm just interested in motivating reasons, the reasons for which the subject believes and acts. And even though it's kind of a philosopher's term of art, talking about motivating reasons does say something fundamental about what moves us from our own perspective to think and act in the way that we do. And this paper came about when I was presenting something else on the topic of reasons, and a kind soul pointed out that I was assuming that we have responsibility for our reasons in this specific sense of motivating reasons. But he pointed out, well, that's very unorthodox. Believing and acting for a reason may well ground our responsibility for our beliefs and actions themselves, and we have responsibility over our actions and potentially also over our beliefs as well. But this isn't to say that we're actually responsible for believing and acting for one reason over another. But I thought some more, I realised that I did have this assumption, and I made the implicit assumption explicit and ended up endorsing it. So I thought, well, we do seem to hold people responsible for doing the right thing and holding the right beliefs for the right reasons. And insofar as we think that subjects are only responsible for things that they have control over, well, it looks like they have control over the reasons for which they believe and act as well. Hence the title of this paper, Controlling Our Reasons. And this isn't to say that we have control over what are in fact good reasons or any kind of, subpersonal process. I don't think that's the case at all. This kind of responsibility, I think, is clearest when others do the right thing and think the right things, but for bad reasons. And then we seem to hold them responsible for this. So suppose your friend volunteers out of self-interest. Well, they obviously should continue volunteering. That's the right thing to do, and we'd say as such. But we tell them, well, you shouldn't do it for this reason. You shouldn't act just out of self-interest. You ought to volunteer because of the goodness of your own heart. Or suppose my friend believes that Valeria is going to go to the party, and she believes this because Valeria said she would go to the party. Now, I happen to know that you cannot trust Valeria's word at all. She's very unreliable. But also that Valeria's love interest Victor is going to go. And so in this case, I'd say, well, you ought to believe that Valeria is going to go to the party, absolutely. But you shouldn't believe it. You ought not believe it, because if Valeria says so, she's completely unreliable. Instead, you should believe it because Victor's going to go. And if Victor's going to go, well, of course Valeria's going to go. And so in these kind of cases, I think that we hold people accountable, not just for what they do, what they believe, but why they do it, why they believe it. And as I mentioned before, if we think that responsibility requires control, as is only fair, well, I think that we have control and agency over our motivating reasons as well, and that we have a form of reasons control. But then the question is, well, how do we make sense of this? We seem to have a bit of a puzzle. And that's kind of partly why this thesis is so controversial to begin with. Why someone might think, well, it is only just a mistaken implicit assumption. So we can't choose to believe something for one reason over another. Arguably, we can't choose to act for one reason over another as well, although some people think that we do. But certainly, I can't choose to believe that it'll rain because of a horoscope as opposed to the weather forecast. You might offer me a lot of money to try and hold one belief for one reason over another. It would be such a great party trick, especially, at least among certain epistemologists. If, you could offer me some money and then I believe P for the reason that Q as opposed to the reason that R, that'd be amazing. But I just can't do that. So it seems, well, maybe we don't have this kind of control to begin with. But stubborn person that I am, I saw this more of a challenge. And I think there's a lot of resources for saying how this kind of control would be possible if we look to the literature on epistemic control. So we can't choose our beliefs, we arguably can't believe on the basis of pragmatic reasons, but still there's a lot of options in the literature as to how we still might be said to have agency and control over our beliefs. Kind of unfortunately for me, my favourite account of epistemic agency is a reasons responsiveness account. So I think that we're responsible for our beliefs because of how we form and sustain our beliefs on the basis of reasons, and we could respond to reasons. But I also think that we can respond to reasons, and that if we have a reasons responsiveness account of control, well, this amounts to a form of control over our reasons, which grounds responsibility. Now, this obviously makes things harder because you've got this threat of regress, but I say more about this in the paper and about what this kind of responsiveness might look like. So my next steps going forward are to develop a monograph exploring these issues. I think basically, in addition to epistemic control and intentional control, we also have reasons control over believing and acting for one reason over another. There's a lot of different issues that we can consider afresh once we start thinking about responsibility, control, and agency at this level. Thanks.